I will start us off here with our overview PowerPoint for the proposed 2021 budget. This is budgets are always a tremendous amount of work by a lot of people, and this year is absolutely no exception. We had a significant number of challenges put upon us as we tried to develop this year's budget, mostly working remotely. And then as well, trying to get a handle on revenues in an ever-changing dynamic economy. So the next slide will begin to talk about some highlights of the 21 budget. The proposed budget before you has a flat mill levy from the year before. As commissioner, and we had this question from the Journal World. We develop our budget off of a proposed mill levy. And then as the assessed valuation process continues, that mill levy is finalized in October as tax bills are prepared. So there are some slight modifications from what you all see here in July and August to what happens when we get them on the tax bills. So, but this is a flat mill levy from that mill levy. Our assessed valuation growth and CPI under the tax lid was approximately, Cammie, do you have that number? Oh, there we go. So 4.82, our total assessed valuation growth was 4.82%. Of that, under the tax lid, we get to keep a CPI rate of 1.8, and then any new growth improvements that were made is a part of that assessed valuation. So our total assessed valuation growth was 2.79 of that 4.82. And I just always think this is an important statistic for people to understand that, this is the impact of the tax lid on our organization and our ability to do things for the community is having that reduced amount of total growth in ad valorem. This slide outlines our different mill levied funds. Our largest mill levied fund is the general fund. And here we show, the 21 recommended budget, the ad valorem needed, what that is with a 2.5% delinquency, and then how that translates to mill levy for both this proposed budget, which is the 2020 mill levy, and then last year's mill levy. This year, our ad valorem delinquency, we went with 2.5. Traditionally, we've gone with 2. Correct, Cammie?
We've traditionally gone with 2.5. We considered going with 3%.
But and I think that's a number that we can continue to watch and monitor. But as property taxes were paid in May, we felt like this was a solid number for a solid assumption based off of what we were doing currently. And then you see each of the other levied funds. We did have some movement between road and bridge and special building, and I'm sure when we get to public works later today, we can talk about that some more. Any questions on any of these mill levied funds? We also show here the funds that are supported by other special revenues, including the mental health countywide sales tax. Fund balances. So a big part of this year's budget was conversations about fund balances. The 2020 budget had a fund balance, budgeted fund balance of just over $3 million. We were able to start this year in much better shape than that based off of how we finished 2019 and consciously left some funds in fund balance more so than we would have done in the past. Those were specifically left in the proposed budget or in the fund balance to assist with phasing in the ongoing operations of a jail expansion. So it's important to know that there's at least $2 million that would have additional funds in that fund balance than we would have had in previous years. And this really is something that provides us two opportunities. One, our fund balance, as the commissioners are aware, is lower than many other municipalities. So it would be a way to increase our fund balances and bolster that security. It is also a strategy that could be used that if sales tax revenues decrease beyond the already 10% decrease that we've planned, that we could utilize some of that fund balance to help meet that need both in 2020, on the current year, and in 2021. Sales tax, so we started talking about sales tax a little bit. The county, of our total budget, it's approximately 9% is sales tax, which is pretty low for local government, you know, in cities and in other counties. In this situation, I think it really helps us that we have a more stable revenue source that funds the majority of our budget. Sales tax is generally can be pretty volatile, and particularly given the climate in 2020 and 2021, we have some real issues with trying to estimate sales tax properly. So how we tried to approach this was, you know, our current projections really aren't giving a whole lot of, they're around about 90 days behind. So we really don't have a good sense of how the rest of the year is going to fall, and from what we've seen so far this year. So we proposed a 10% reduction in sales tax revenues for the remainder of 2020 and all of 2021. If that, and then we also have a variety of strategies that if that reduction is not sufficient, or if we see more revenue reductions than that 10%. Any questions on that, on sales tax? Okay, in your book, you have a detailed sales tax chart, which Cammie is going to kind of highlight there. We track sales tax by month back to through 2013. So you can see how it varies over time, and you can see how we, and if you want to know where that's at in your book, to get the detail, it's under your orange tab for trends and analysis. And there is a, right, Cammie, there's a sales tax.
Yes.
I think it's page 9 underneath that. So if you want to dig into that. And I think our plan really moving forward is Cammie and I really committed that, you know, as she gets these numbers every month, we will check them back against what our projections have shown. And we can update the commission on a more frequent basis than perhaps we've done in the past in terms of how sales tax is matching our projections. So I talked a little bit earlier about some strategies as to how to approach the 2021 budget. So when you're in a situation where you don't really know how revenues are going to continue for the rest of the current year and into the proposed year based off of a global pandemic, the best I felt like I could do as the administrator was to try to come up with a couple of different strategies, as what we named them, to be prepared for those contingencies if they should come up. The largest, I would say, strategy to give us that flexibility in the 2021 budget is that there are no employee raises for market merit or longevity in 2021. While, as the commissioners are aware, each year we budget for increases in our employee compensation pay plan. At Douglas County here, our raises are for market merit are given at the beginning of the year. So they've already been given for 2020. So really the flexibility I have with this is really into 2021. I think in my conversations with department heads, there was a universal understanding that was probably, that raises were something that we did not feel would be appropriate for the 2021 budget. However, we're sitting in June of 2020. And one of my concerns is that a year from now, if the economy is turned back around, we might be behind in terms of employee pay and employee competitiveness even more than we've been before. And so I'd like to have the ability with the commission to approach this issue again next year if we've met revenue targets and if we're in a better financial position and don't want to say better financial position. What I really mean is a more stable financial position, and come back to the commission and have that conversation. Second quarter, third quarter, probably second quarter, mid-year 2021, when we have a better sense of how things are going. In the meantime, there are some other additional strategies that we have in place that can allow us some flexibility to maintain our sound financial position. And the first of those is what we talked about earlier, which was the additional fund balance in the general fund of $2 million. In addition to that, as the commissioners are aware, in 2019, the county commission cut the ongoing operating budget, and $2.4 million of that cut remains and is held in this budget, and is that transfer amount in 2021 could be used to offset any financial needs we have. The 2020 budgeted amount is included in the $9 million in cash CIP set aside for the jail expansion project. So it's in here as well, but it has already been moved into that project account. That could be changed if it's the commission's wish to do that. But I thought from Cammie and I's perspective, the 2021 budgeted transfer amount was definitely something we wanted to make the commission aware of. And then I would say lastly, of our large scale strategies as to how to approach this would be a portion of the sales tax transfer from the general fund to the sales tax debt fund. As the commissioners are aware, and we've spoken about publicly, of the $7 million that come into the county general fund for sales tax, half of it goes into a CIP sales tax fund to pay off debt associated with that fund, and that is financed by these GO-backed, so general obligation-backed sales tax bonds. Our current debt payment in 2021 is significantly less than that half, that 3.5 million. So we've traditionally just still been putting money in there to raise a fund balance or some cash on hand to help finance projects. But there's definitely money there that could be used, particularly on a short-term basis. With each of these, there are really positives and negatives to how to approach it. With the sales tax debt fund, what I would encourage with both that one and the 2019 cut money, those are ongoing funds. And I feel like the county has been very financially prudent to set those funds aside to prepare for the future. Depending on how those were used, and if they had ongoing obligations into the future, you've really reduced that flexibility. So, I do think it's a difficult situation, and sometimes in terms of how best to use that. The commission knows, as the administrator, our ability to issue debt to pay for large capital projects is something that in counties is very difficult to come by. Counties can only issue 3% of their total assessed valuation for general obligation bonds. Most counties develop strategies like a sales tax or a public building commission to help make it easier to finance debt projects. And so our ability to do that through this sales tax transfer is really important for our ongoing long-term sustainability of financing our capital improvement plan. Any questions on those strategies? I don't know that you're really going to need any of them, immediately as we set the 2021 budget. But I want you to know that they're there, and it's something that we can use and monitor as we go through. And just lastly, as we begin to get ready for hearing from our community partner organizations and our departments, you know, this is a momentous process. You're going to review budgets from over 40 community partners, and let's see, I always forget, and over 15 departments during these hearings. This process, I appreciate your dedication to it. I know the agencies and departments appreciate your time and attention during this process. It's not easy. I know you all have very busy lives and obligations. And so to take this time to sit and, once a year sort of reconnect with agencies and departments and sort of recenter ourselves into our budget, which is our largest policy document, is really a great opportunity and is actually really exciting for someone like me. So I really appreciate your time doing this. It's something that a lot of elected bodies don't do. So I applaud you for that. There are a number of supplemental requests, and we will point them out as we go through each of the hearings. So just to explain for folks, we have hearings set with every community partner and every department, regardless of whether or not they have a supplemental request or not. Some of these requests might be one time, and even though on your sheet we show what the mill levy impact of that one-time request might be, it could be financed with fund balance or other one-time funds without impacting the mill levy. And as the commissioners are aware, we can discuss that as we go. And some of these requests might be eligible for potential CARES Act funding. Most of these supplemental requests were developed in very early, late February, early March, as we were entering into the global pandemic. A lot of agencies were uncertain as to what to request and how to approach that. So, I think those are conversations that we can have now that we've got a few more months under our belt and we have a little bit more information regarding the CARES Act. Any questions on that? So I think that's the, go ahead, Nancy.
Sarah, I just, I think it would be helpful, probably not now because we have a tight schedule, but either at the end of today's meeting or maybe tomorrow. I know you don't know everything about the CARES Act funding. That's just coming together, but I think it'd be really helpful in our deliberations, at least I feel like it would be helpful to understand a little bit more about a lot more about the CARES Act and kind of the breadth and depth of that opportunity to fund some, really substantial things, but also some of these smaller things. I think it would be great for us to have a little better background on what that CARES Act money can mean for the community and mean for this budget. And I know you don't know much about it yet, but you know a little more at this point than we did a week or two ago.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something we can do if we have some time today. What we're working on, there was a great statewide webinar last Friday. So we're revising our kind of fact sheet on that and preparing for the resolution that the County Commission needs to adopt. That won't be on tomorrow's agenda. Our plan was to have it on next week's agenda, but we can give you some highlights and kind of talk a little bit more through our approach as to how we want to do this.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things I wanted to mention about this process as we go, and I know, and I know we have a couple of attendees on the line as we talk about how these hearings are going to go. I have just really appreciated the Commission's understanding and flexibility as we try to do budget hearings online. This is a whole new world for all of us. So my intent is to try to help keep us on time as we move through these hearings. You just never know on a Zoom call. Sometimes everybody's really chatty and sometimes folks really don't have that much to put forward. So I will try to play a pretty strong facilitation role to try to keep us on track and make sure that we have time in our schedule to review any supplemental requests. I think that's a change to last year. It was really great to have community partners around a table with the Commission talking through issues involving that population that they jointly serve, and kind of have a great dialogue. I'm a little concerned that that's going to be hard via Zoom. So I just encourage, our attendees and participants to try to make this as conversational as possible as we approach, as we try to make this work. And then also, I guess, we're gonna, if I anticipate, as commissioners know, we always get additional materials through this process that we want to share with you. Cammie is saving all those separate, she always does anyway. And then our plan would be to try to email you anything kind of like once a day so that you get it all at once. If you would prefer for us to make a hard copy of something, just let us know and you can come in and pick it up, or at some other time. I know, like, particularly some of these documents, the print's really small. And so, if you want a bigger copy that you can put in your book, we can certainly do so. Just let us know on that. And then one of the things on schedule that I had talked about with Commissioner Kelly was about deliberations. So we have scheduled Zoom calls for deliberations starting next Wednesday, the 8th. I guess I just wanted to kind of open that up to commissioners to see how, and we can see how this goes, how comfortable they are having deliberations over Zoom, and kind of what Cammie's timelines are to get everything done, so that we can get published for our public hearing in August. Cammie gave me that date. I know it's on our budget calendar. And then Cammie, you promptly told me, and then I don't believe I wrote it down.
It's July 20th.
Okay.
Which is a Monday. So really the Friday before is more reasonable, the 17th.
And does that give you enough time to get everything completed that you need to get completed?
Yeah, as long as there aren't changes other than these supplementals or something minor.
Okay. Thoughts on deliberations, or?
Well, my hope is if the governor's, if the phase, what phase are we in? Phase 3 ends on July 5th, that we will be able to meet in person. I think, to me, it's kind of up to that, so.
Yeah, and as the commissioners know, I would lose at the Vegas tables of trying to guess what Governor Kelly does next. I'm always very proud of the work that she's done to help us here at the local level, but we are anticipating that we will need to have local orders in place, and that's something that I've been in conversations with Dr. Marcelino about as to how we approach what a local order, when we are under a local order right now, and we just have adopted the governor's phasing. So, and I hope to know more about our direction on that before the end of this week.
I'm pretty comfortable with the screens, the plastic screens that we purchased to kind of separate us and allow us our social distancing. But yeah, it's up to my fellow commissioners and probably what's going on in Douglas County. It's been kind of interesting here lately how the numbers are rising.
But so what I see on next week's calendar, it looks like you've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday blocked off for our deliberations and hopefully final. I would think that would be plenty of time.
Yeah, and I think what we were trying to say is that if, let's say, like, you wanted to give that a little more space with the governor's phasing, you could come back. We could not have those meetings Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You could come back the next Monday, the 13th, and deliberate perhaps in person if we wanted just a little more time between, depending on how things are going with phase out plans and the governor's the governor's plans and just the virus in general. So I guess we just want to plant that seed that if you would rather say, hey, I'd like to think on it a bit, can we get back in person, but I'd rather do that, you know, the week after. But I also know you guys have got busy schedules and that may be more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, I'm sort of fine waiting to see what happens this week. You know, as we look to July 5th, that'll tell us, I think, a little more. If we've learned nothing, it's sometimes waiting gives us more knowledge.
All right, well, I appreciate the commissioners and just feel free to keep us posted on that. And then we can, generally we just, you know, at a minimum need 24 hours notice to sort of inform the media if we're making some sort of change. Okay, so it is 9:30 exactly. Any other questions before we move into our first hearing? If not, then I think we've, is it Davion or Jill going to help us move attendees over to panelists for hearings?
I can do that. This is Daviana.
So we're going to start moving over our safety net community service providers into the hearing. Welcome.
Sarah, if anybody needs my co-host ability, I'm willing to give it up. Just give me the command.
And Daviana, I'm going to ask that you move Megan Poindexter over right now too. She's going to speak on behalf of, speak to Emergency Services Council changes.
Okay, while everybody's coming in, this is our safety net group and our safety net strategic program area of our community partners. This is an assortment of community providers that do a variety of wonderful work in our community to help provide for safety net services for our general citizen, for our citizens. It's been a long morning already. We do have 3 supplemental requests in this group. ESC, and I think Megan's going to speak on behalf of ESC today, Just Food, and the Lawrence Community Shelter, which I'm not sure I see them here yet.
No, I can give her a call and see if she's been delayed or not. At a minimum, I'm happy to speak to it.
See if you can get Renee on the line.
Yeah.
I believe I have everybody moved over.
Great, thank you. Boy, nothing like putting you guys on the spot to be the first group to have a online budget hearing. Most of you were here last year and heard how we approached these hearings. And so, you know, I don't know if, and I also know, I was hoping, Jill, while we're at it, I mean, we may try to contact Cynthia with VNA. She specifically asked to be in this group.
Yeah,
and I think
I'll reach out.
I just moved her over as well.
Okay.
There she is.
Okay, there's Cynthia, and then Jill. I think then we've got Jill too as well from Independency. So maybe we should just start by kind of having each of the community service providers introduce themselves. And I think introductions on Zoom are incredibly awkward, but we're going to try it anyway, at least for this first round. And so maybe I'll start with you, Chrissy, because you're first on my screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Chrissy Heikla and I'm the Executive Director at the Sexual Trauma and Abuse Care Center.
I know, it's funny. And then Megan.
I'm Megan Poindexter. I'm the Executive Director for the Senior Resource Center, but for these purposes, I am representing the ESC group, which I'm pretty new to, so I'll just do my best.
We got you. And then Sharon.
Sharon Spratt, CEO for Cottonwood Incorporated. So.
Liz.
Hi, Elizabeth Keeper, Executive Director of Just Food.
Cynthia.
Yes, Cynthia Lewis, CEO of Douglas County Visiting Nurses, and I asked Sarah to join the safety net services because while the majority of our population are seniors, the majority of these dollars are used for the uninsured and underinsured. So that felt like safety net to me. So thank you, Sarah, for making that shift for us.
No worries. Jill?
Jill Dudley, Executive Director of Independence Incorporated.
Okay, well, while we are waiting on Renee, I think we could go ahead and get started. So I guess I just would turn it over to our panelists to, if there are any specific information you want to give us at this point in terms of the state of safety net services here in 2020 and 2021.
I don't want to hijack things, but I think maybe one of the biggest things that I think we've accomplished in this area is related to the intentional conversations that we've had around Emergency Services Council. I think everybody kind of understands, I hope most of the folks understand why that work is important. And Daviana, I see that Renee's joined us, if you'd move her over for us. But Emergency Services Council funding provides, it's historically been administered by Salvation Army. They're going through a transition in leadership right now. And so we're struggling to get somebody to be a part of this conversation. They're shifting lieutenants beginning tomorrow, I think. But those are rent assistance, utility assistance, often resources of last resort for a lot of the providers work really collaboratively together. We've been, Sarah and I and Daviana have been intentionally having conversations with the 5 agencies that encompass Emergency Services Council this last year really to try to better understand the need and really encouraging the providers to talk about how can the program be reimagined as easily as possible to better serve clients and be a little more user-friendly for the agencies to administer. And so I want to, I've asked Megan. Megan very graciously agreed to facilitate some of those conversations between the executive directors. And I think we've come up what we think is a great strategy that we're going to actually shift to mid-year this year and go into 2021 with as well. So Megan, would you talk a little bit about what those conversations look like?
Absolutely. This has been a really, really great opportunity to really leverage the collaborative experience that I think most of us in Douglas County and the social service sector are experiencing, whereas we're really working to identify how we can do things more efficiently, more effectively, with a greater impact. And this was an area that, you know, the Salvation Army has really carried a lot of the administrative load for quite a long time for the ESC dollars. And the other associated organizations, so Salvation Army, Ballard, ECAN, Senior Resource Center, and the Willow. And these organizations are the ones who have kind of funneled these dollars through. However, we've collaborated with additional organizations throughout the community when they've identified an individual who needs assistance with rent or utilities in order to prevent a homelessness situation. And this has been a program that is it's been around for a few decades, as I understand it. And we did benefit from some of the historical look back from some folks who've been involved for the majority of that time to understand why it has been done the way it's been done. And Jill and Sarah led us in a really great opportunity to analyze the flawed nature of doing things the way you've always done them, just for the sake of doing things the way you've always done them, and gave us a chance to, as Jill said, re-envision this and reimagine this. Giving the Salvation Army the majority of the administrative responsibility, although they've done a wonderful job with it and it's fantastic, one of the challenges is that all of the organizations involved also have other funding opportunities that can help to augment and really leverage these particular dollars. but they've got conflicting requirements for utilization. And so because the dollars are all limited, no one source of dollars can cover 100% of the need, what we really realized is that we were kind of shoehorning ourselves into a position where we weren't able to utilize these dollars to their best. And by taking a step back and realizing that ultimately the goal is that we're able to quickly and efficiently get these dollars into the hands of the utility provider or the landlord in order to help an individual maintain their housing, having some of these layers as well as these conflicting applications that people would have to go through was really causing some barriers that were unnecessary, as well as some time constraints that were unnecessary. So our re-envisioning of this continues to be that any dollars would be paid third party only. We all agree that that's a pretty important aspect of just basic care and maintenance of public dollars, is just doing third party payments. Each organization that's involved has had a percentage of the total dollars allocated. Those percentages would continue, generally speaking, that the Salvation Army, Ballard, and ECAN receive the majority of the dollars because they serve the widest population base. And so people coming in through their doors or contacting them would really have the broadest need. The Senior Resource Center and the Willow do have a little bit more of a narrow group that they meet. And so the two of us would then have just a smaller percentage of these dollars. But instead of all of the funding going directly to the Salvation Army, and then they have to play banker, I guess, if you will, to do all of the distribution, we would shift to having each organization with their own criteria that would qualify a person to utilize these funds based on the populations that we work directly with. So for a couple of the organizations, their base is pretty broad, and so they're able to really work with the majority of folks. The Senior Resource Center, of course, we're limited to working with people who are seniors. And so I don't want my restrictions hampering the deeds of anybody else in this group. And so we want to be able to move that along quickly and efficiently. This then allows us to make the decision based best on the population that we work with, almost down to the individuals that we work with. The majority of the time when someone comes in for these dollars, there's often already an existing relationship between that individual and that organization. And if there's not, this is the segue. This is the opportunity to create that relationship, because this is clearly a person who's got some other issues that are challenging them. And so if I've got a senior that comes in and they need $100 for a utility bill, that's great. We can then engage that senior for our other services for seniors. But if it's the Willow, they come in and they need $800 for a place to live. The limiting amount of money that this has, if we're very willing to work with the individual situations, then Megan Stuckey can pull in dollars from some of her other sources to help that person make that specific need. But then, because she's only working with DV individuals, she's able to then pull that person into their other services and do their additional care. Same thing for Ballard, talking about families with children and maybe 4, 5, or 6 or more people in the household. That's a different situation than one of my seniors who it's maybe them by themselves. And so we need to be able to be very personalized and specific with our ability to help these individuals on a case-by-case basis and make it really personalized and specific for their needs. So let's see, one of the aspects of this is one of the really big challenges that we're looking at regarding these dollars is how big is the need. Any of these conversations that we've had, what we hear repeatedly, particularly from Salvation Army and Ballard and ECAN, because they do serve the broadest of that population, is that they are out of their dollars each month within moments of the day that the dollars became available. And so we know that the need is greater than what we've got allocated to be able to assist those individuals, because it just goes so quickly, and then immediately they've got folks that they're having to turn down. What we don't currently have is a mechanism to measure the breadth of that need. What we hope is by streamlining and making efficiencies out of the process for the applicants to get these dollars, that's going to open up the opportunity for us to get creative in figuring out how to actually measure the full scope of the need in the community, and then make some strategic and smart choices going forward how to meet that need. But right now we need to figure out our data, all steps. So we need to meet the need today. We need to keep the people in their homes today, but then we need to be able to put some energies and resources towards getting our arms around the bigger number, so that we can maybe come up with more things to do. Some of this does include conversations with the utilities, and we've had some very positive conversations with those entities, because we're talking about all of Douglas County. We're talking about multiple entities that are providing these utilities. Landlords conversations, those are a little more tricky because there's just a lot of them, and figuring out how to work with those individuals is a little bit of a different ball game. But we really want to step back a little bit and look at this in a more holistic view, so that we can be more impactful going forward.
Thank you, Megan. And the last thing I'll add, just because there is a supplemental associated with this, that just so you have a sense of what the need was this past year, or the demand was in 2019. There were 216 total requests were fulfilled. 42 of those were for rent, totaling just under $10,000. 174 of those were for utility assistance, at just under $35,000. And I'll leave it to Sarah. I don't know where you want the conversation, where we should shift to, or with you're on mute. Sorry.
I guess I just open it up if commissioners have any questions over what Megan discussed, since that's kind of the overview of ESC and the supplemental.
So that was a great overview. I'm really, really excited to hear about kind of the reimagined ESC fund, because it's such an important one, and it's so it's not able to meet by any stretch of the imagination the current needs, especially under COVID. But looking at the budget, I'm kind of surprised. Is it really true that the city of Lawrence does not contribute anything to this emergency fund? I don't see that.
I feel like a little bit in defense of our city partners. So there are a number of pots that pay for utility and rent assistance throughout this community. They don't specifically contribute to this emergency service council fund.
Okay.
I know that they do some, and Jill may have a better understanding, but in terms of what kind of write-offs they can do for utilities. But I don't want to, like Megan said, every agency's got, the community foundation puts a significant amount of money into rent and utility assistance in this community. So I feel like every agency sort of has a source of small, large sources of funds to help with this. But Jill, you might know a little bit more about.
I can just, I've really been working with the Salvation Army to try to get a better data set. But what I do have for 2019, I can tell you that 57 of those 174 utility requests for 2019, 57 of them were for water utilities. And I don't have the specific utility listed on there who it was, but a good amount of them, when I have looked at previous lists that does have the specific utility on there, a good amount are for city utilities. There is Cdbg money that is pulled into here that is really, really a great resource, and that Salvation Army has been the applicant historically for that. And United Way actually has indicated that they're willing to be the apply for those funds in the future, just to have a more stable, sustainable partner with that as well. But as far as I know, it's just the CDBG dollars and that are offsetting that from the city. But with the data, like Megan mentioned, we're hoping that we can present some more compelling information and enter into some more intentional conversations with them.
Well, I think that's great. And not at all trying to stir the pot or point fingers. I just think it's important for all of us to understand what role we're all playing in this really incredibly difficult sector that is, I think, going to be taking a lot of our time and attention and investment, especially in this COVID time. So I really think it's important for us to understand how we can work with the city and others to make sure this fund, is a little more impactful. So appreciate all the work you guys are doing on it. It's exciting.
I have just a couple of quick questions, and Jill, it might be something to follow up. I'm seeing that the 65,000 is 68% of the budget, and sort of towards Nancy's question, I'd be interested in who else funds that ESC fund and the percentages, so if it's Douglas County Community Foundation, that, who that is.
Warm Hearts does help provide, the Warm Hearts dollars help offset some of the funding.
Okay.
And then the other one, I think they do get a small amount from the Rice Foundation each year as well.
Okay.
That makes up that total budget number for them. And what Megan was speaking to was what the directive that Sarah and I gave to the work that Megan facilitated was strictly towards the amount that comes from Douglas County. If you considered the Douglas County funding, a discretionary, no strings attached, so to speak, sort of fund. The others are not so no strings attached. Warm Hearts can only be used within a certain, there's a lot more guardrails on that. Same with CDBG. The reporting alone on CDBG it's a lot of work.
Thanks, Jill. And then for Megan, so I think the idea of being able to provide additional services when people come in requesting these funds, or maybe you're already giving services through your organization, is what I heard you say, and these funds make sense. Has there been any thought about those populations that, may not be accessing these services at all, that maybe just missed out on? I guess my thinking is the Salvation Army has a wide, I don't know that the Salvation Army, maybe we're getting more people, maybe we're getting less people. I don't know. I just want to know the thinking that went behind that. Are there populations that we're worried we're missing by this new model?
That's a great question. And that's something that we've talked pretty extensively about. One of our intentions with this is to have an agreement between the 5 agencies, because we do want to make sure that anytime, for instance, someone comes in my door but doesn't necessarily qualify as a senior, that I'm making sure that that connection is then completed with one of the more appropriate agencies. And that, of course, requires that conversation, that communication about what is your area that you're allowed to work with based on other restrictions that your organization might have. So not just the 5 of us making sure that we're doing a really good job of communicating who might fall into our catch, but also having some information. We've talked about doing kind of a one-sheeter, if you will, that we can give to the Care Center and Just Food and VNA and Indie Inc. And so that they have a pretty easy reference as to when they encounter someone that falls into this need, that they can get them directly to the best organization possible. All of these collaborative conversations aid that process. So maintaining that regular communication. Right now we're meeting a lot because we're trying to do a new thing, but we don't want to lose those relationships. And especially like as Salvation Army brings their new lieutenant in, we've got to build that new relationship there with that individual. That takes that time and that interconnection. And then yes, I mean, there's always the concern that there are people in our community who are not pursuing opportunities for assistance. So if we've got utility companies who are aware of what we may or may not be able to help with, and they're observing someone who's not getting their bills paid, if landlords are aware, if that communication can continue to grow and expand, then the likelihood that someone's going to completely slip through the cracks diminishes. Some of the concern that we have in regards to the barriers for individuals to access these dollars is because just the process is pretty cumbersome for a person. Let's say, you know, I work my hourly job, and for me to be able to take the time away from work to call around town at the beginning of every month to see if I can get some assistance with my utilities, it's just truly problematic, and you have to, you know, try and hit it first thing. I mean, this is the age-old model. I was doing this 20 years ago in Wyandotte, and back then we had to physically drive from organization to organization to try and figure this out. So I think there's going to be some chances maybe for some technology in the future as well that can try and streamline this, that then could also be shared and communicated in the future. We just want to shake ourselves out of the kind of the doing it this way mentality, so that then maybe we can find ways to help folks that are not even aware this is an option.
I want to jump in and just say we've got about 20 minutes left in this group, and I know we have 2 other supplementals. So if anybody else has any quick questions on ESC, if not, we could move on.
Hey, the last thing I'll say is that we presented this to our Human Services Coalition, which is a huge stakeholder group that we indicated we would be having this doing this work on, and there was nothing but support for the model that Megan has shared with you all today from a real broad coalition of human service providers. So I think that's a good word of support.
I guess just with the time we have, I guess I want to make sure we have conversations on the other supplementals. So maybe Liz, you could kind of talk to us a little bit about your request and just maybe even an update on how things are going with food distribution.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, everyone. So good to see everyone's lovely faces. I miss you all, seeing you all in person so much. So our supplemental request is, I don't know how many of you I've had the opportunity to talk about some of our plans that we've been working on for actually quite a bit of time now. Over the years, our building has been really great in the sense that it is a central location for many folks who need our services in the community. And we've grown a lot over the years. We are 10 years old as an organization. And one of the things that we've really found is that our pantry space just simply isn't enough for the need. I don't know if anyone has been in our facility at some of our busiest times, but there is literally no space to wait to have your turn to check in. On our single busiest day, we've served just shy of 300 folks, 300 families in one day. And as we know about shopping, often people bring others, kids or spouses, things like that, to shop. So our pantry just gets so packed, and we knew that we really needed to do something to address our space and how to make it more of a presentable shopping experience for folks in our community. One of the things that's really challenging, and I don't know if anyone wants to share my screen so I can show this image a little bit better. But our waiting area, we don't have a designated waiting area for our clients. So we have a really big challenge because our area that people have to wait to get checked in is in the middle of the shopping area. And it can really create a tense environment for those who are really needing food assistance and nervous about where their next meal is coming from, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if you can imagine having to sit in the middle of a food pantry while people shop around you to check in. And not to mention right now in the middle of a global pandemic, our pantry is just simply not safe to have the volume of folks that we need to serve in the space that we have. And to be perfectly honest, we're coming up on a really big challenge. The elements have made it very difficult for us to continue curbside distribution. It is not food safe to have all that product outside. We're using everything we can, like tents and freezer blankets, but doing 5 hours at a time with running out fresh foods like milk and proteins and things like that, it's becoming dangerous. So we have made the decision to adjust our distribution and move things inside again. We're limiting it to 5 shoppers at a time, 15 minutes per shopper, and we've got a system in place to let folks come in. So we're really hoping that people will be able to enjoy total choice again, which is really nice, and that we're still going to be able to get people out in and out quickly. And hopefully with less people there, it creates a little bit easier of a shopping experience. But it is going to be a challenge. Of course, all the safety precautions are going to be implemented. And we're still working with our community partners and our staffing to do deliveries. We know that not everyone is going to want to come visit in person. So we're doing an expansive amount of deliveries, anywhere from the folks at the Senior Resource Center picking up for their clients, Burt Nash caseworkers picking up for their clients every day. So we're still going to continue those important partnership in making sure that those individuals get access to healthy food. It's been an incredible 3 months. I can't believe we've been doing this for 16 weeks now. It's been remarkable to see the number of folks who still continue to line up every week. We have been really, I would say, innovative on how we're learning to communicate with our clients. We did implement a text message service with our clients. So we're able to text people live updates on how things are going. And also, as we open our doors again, people can text us and ask us how long the line is to get in, things like that. So we're really excited about how much we've been able to have a better communication with our clients. So between our website that has a chat functionality, between our text message services, blast email services, and then all of our changes have been in flyers and people's boxes. So I think we're working really hard at making sure that we're getting adequate communication out to the folks that we're serving, and so grateful for frankly all the community partners that are around the table who have been really helpful in us making sure that everyone in this community has food. We've been so proud to work with so many people who are continuing to be such key players in this. But
I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions for you. Just want to try to keep us moving.
Has anyone seen the renovation drawings from Gold Evans? I don't know if that got in. Okay.
Liz, you can email them to us and we can get them in the packet.
Okay, great. So Gold Evans has been donating their time to do renovation, that all the drawings and things like that. One of the great things that I think is a great case study as to why this needs to happen is they actually mapped our clients to really show the inefficiencies of our food pantry in the current layout. And it flies in the face of all the safety precautions that we're having now, of not doubling back, of, keeping people 6 feet apart. It's, with the volume that we serve, it's nearly impossible. So it's a great testament to why this is needed. I will make a last plug. One of the things that is my favorite about the renovation, in 2019, we were so proud to launch our partnership with LMH Health and did free on-site screenings. We were doing blood pressure and glucose and cholesterol screenings each month. And those are happening right in the middle of the lobby, which is not the most, people were being told that they were diabetic for the first time in their life in the middle of our lobby. which is not a great experience right there. So this also creates a designated space for that to happen, for those conversations to happen. So all the community outreach folks from LMH will have the table out there, let people know that the screenings are happening, and be able to take them back. And we'll be able to just have that space for private confidential meetings with our clients. It's a lot more of a trauma-informed care approach on how we provide services to the folks in our community.
I did want to say that I do think it's a possibility, Liz, that depending on what we learn about the CARES Act, that this request or another part of this request could be eligible for CARES Act funding. We're really in the, I think, you know, food security is definitely a big part of something that those funds are meant to use. And I do think trying to have safe social distancing is something that would definitely fit along those criteria. What we're not clear on is the capital and the timelines to spend it and have it completed. And so I know, could you talk a little bit about, like, I know you had a timeline and it's kind of gotten interrupted, but perhaps what that, a little bit about the timeline.
Yeah, so we've received through grants like the Rice Foundation and the Sunderland Foundation. We're about a quarter of the way funded through the entire project, but we still have a bit to go. Our timeline has been greatly interrupted because we were expecting to have fundraisers to round out the project now, but of course, as we all know, those fundraisers have not happened, and our financial priorities have shifted when it comes to our fundraising. So we have our fundraising for the renovation has been on hold. If funds were to be available to start the project, it would be a matter of those permit waiting periods that we would need, and it would be for a pretty drastic improvement on the building. One of the things is right now, our ADA accessibility for our building is embarrassing, to be perfectly honest. The grade is pretty steep, and the metal door is very heavy. So we could do a lot when it comes to accessibility for a building that is a part of the renovation plan as well.
Any questions for Liz? Thank you, Liz. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks, Liz. Just appreciate all you're doing and all your board's doing to step up and feed our community. I think, I bet I speak for my fellow commissioners. So thanks for that.
Well,
timeline.
We're really lucky. We've got an incredibly hardworking board, and my volunteers and my team have just been, I could not be more proud of what everyone's been able to accomplish, including Sarah's incredible mom, who bags produce faster than anyone you've ever met. So.
All right, thank you, Liz. Renee, do you want to talk a little bit about your supplemental?
Hi, sorry, I had to unmute and turn on my video, but yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about flexible rental assistance for folks exiting the shelter. I also want to just give you guys a quick update on what's going on with the shelter. We've had a lot of success over the last 3 or so months utilizing the rapid rehousing funds that became available in the community to move people out of the shelter. A lot of times we've done what Megan has described doing on the prevention end on the other side, which is braid funding together to provide longer term assistance to folks and to exit people faster. So as you guys know, on the commission, we've discussed a lot the length of stay in the shelter and how that's sort of a really a long period of time that we are allowing people to stay in the shelter. For families, it can be up to 6 months is our average length of stay, and for adults, it's typically 4 to 5 months. And usually what people are doing is they're waiting for a voucher to materialize, and that might be why they're living in the shelter for so long. And I think COVID-19 really made it really crystal clear why that is sort of one of the many scenarios in which that length of stay and not having a way for people to rapidly exit the shelter is problematic for people in terms of their health. This is just a particularly lethal, scary example, but in terms of people's ongoing stays in shelters, it can result in trauma, other violence, exposure to difficulty if you're managing behavioral health issues or substance use disorder or what have you. So we held a fundraiser in March where we raised $17,500 for our direct assistance fund, which is for medical. At that time, we were using it to pay for hotel costs and supplies for folks who are quarantining off-site. Now the county is paying for that and reimbursing us for that, which is really amazing. And thank you guys for that. Also using some of that money for security deposits and first month's rent for folks in situations where we were trying to bridge them to a housing voucher or exit them quicker than sometimes the rapid rehousing check could materialize. Or the way we're managing rapid rehousing is appropriate for our system. We're prioritizing folks who are the most vulnerable and prioritizing people with disabilities. And we're working with Bert Nash to do this, prioritizing people who are unsheltered and trying to get them access to assistance first. But sometimes we have a group of people in the middle who are not the most vulnerable and they need really quick access to rental assistance to exit. So when I submitted this request, we weren't sure what our ESG situation for 2021 or for COVID would look like. ESG is the HUD funds that typically fund rapid rehousing, outreach, homeless prevention, and emergency shelter funding. Now we're putting our application together as a community for rapid rehousing funds, for homeless prevention funds through Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, which is really awesome. And we're likely to get ESG funds as a community. However, those funds are still going to be administered in the same way, and it'll be about $100,000 for the whole community, is what we're hoping. And so, for me, having additional flexible rental assistance is about meeting the needs of even more folks in the shelter who might not be prioritized for that assistance. And then just making sure that we're able to try to meet a goal of moving people out, if not within 30 days, then at least within 90 days. And so on occasions where people are right at the top of our priority high vulnerability list, they're able typically to access assistance pretty quickly. However, just having a more flexible pot of funding is really going to be helpful for us in this context, so we can get people into the shelter and out and on their way if they have income, if they have a support network, and they have the ability to just support themselves over the long haul after assistance runs out. So basically it's for the purpose of braiding in with other funding to support folks just leaving the shelter as quick as they can.
Thanks, Renee.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is, you know, one of the, like I mentioned a little bit, and then you alluded to, like there are additional emergency shelter grant funds coming to our community, and, you know, having flexibility to not necessarily have all those requirements, I can see some real advantages of. I think one of the things that when I started 2020, what I thought we were going to talk about this year was human service planning and safety net planning for our community as a whole. And then, you know, this darn little pesky virus got in the way. And it's really thrown us off track, as well as other things in terms of working on that. And while, and I think the microcosm of what ESC has done here with their, utility assistance is really similar to this conversation. And while I think we've got to find a way as a community to make things streamlined and easy, but then also, like, how do we have a sense of where we are and what the need is, and how we make sure we're working efficiently? And I don't think we're going to solve that this morning in the next 10 to 15 minutes. But I do think that is really a challenge that's before us, both in terms of rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention. I mean, you've heard Jill and I talk, right behind you on that soapbox about the importance of homelessness prevention dollars and working upstream in our community. I think, honestly, to me, it's the thing I'm most disappointed about so far this year is not having the time to really, all of us, dig in on that and get a better handle.
Yeah, and I'd love to work with, other social services providers or partners or consultants or whoever to look at, like, for instance, rent instability or housing instability, rates of those things, while also understanding, like, how this onslaught of unemployment is going to play a role in that. When I think we want to adjust how we do prevention for sure, and the way that Megan's presented it is really smart. Another really great grassroots effort is Lawrence Mutual Aid Network. They're doing something so cool where they're just privately fundraising and just making assistance available via volunteers, and then for people who inevitably don't access that assistance, being able to have rapid rehousing there to pick them back up very quickly, because for whatever reason they just didn't get eviction prevention dollars in time, or they didn't get the car repair in time, or things like that. That's just another step in, like, resource in the pipeline that we can help prevent prolonged chronic homelessness for people.
Renee, can you just briefly describe what the horizon looks like in terms of the evictions we might be facing? I know that a deadline is ending soon in terms of eviction protection. Do we have any sense of what's coming our way, or is that just a generalized sense of dread versus actually knowing kind of some of the numbers we might be facing?
It's such a rapidly changing situation. And like I said, when I wrote this supplemental proposal a couple months ago, I think the scenario looked even different. Now I'm wondering if I should have asked for more money just to really ramp up my staff at the shelter to accommodate more people, because I just don't know. We don't know what that's going to look like. We're hopeful that through ESG, like, that the $100,000 will come through for homeless prevention dollars. However, that's pretty, ESG comes in and is usable, their homeless prevention dollars. It's a little bit inflexible, so you have to have an eviction notice in hand, and even then it's only $1,000. And by the time someone has an eviction notice, they very often owe more than $1,000. You might owe several months of rent plus fees. And so I'm kind of concerned about whether that pot of assistance is really going to meet the need, if it's flexible enough. So hopefully, if we have some ways to braid that in with flexible assistance, we can help people overcome eviction. All I know statistically right now is that, and this is really, now I'm kind of speaking to support what Megan's talking about, but that preventing homelessness is the best thing we can do for ourselves fiscally. The national average is for every household that you prevent from becoming homeless, your community saves $10,000. And so some of this federal funding that's coming through, it's so important, it's so crucial. And I've been harping for since I got here, how important it is that we access and leverage federal funding. And we're setting up, I hope, a system where we can allocate it really intelligently to the community through coordinated entry and collaboration as service agencies. However, the flip side of that is that it's not the most flexible form of assistance. So,
Nancy, this is Jill. One thing I'd add is, in light of COVID, the program that Tenants to Homeowners and Family Promise have put together, the rent stabilization program, I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but you know, Dana Ortiz provided just kind of a status to our recovery group yesterday about how many folks they're serving. So in my mind, you know, first of all, we've got to make sure that we're publicizing through the human resource providers that fund is there, the resources available, and we do have that identified as a pot where we want to funnel some of the federal dollars that are either coming to the county or the city. But what's the demand to that fund, I think is really going to be one of our best leading indicators of how many folks are really struggling and looking at an eviction notice in the future.
You know, Jill and commissioners, I am aware of the time. I think we can run a little bit over here. I know we want to take a small break and catch back up later today, but I just want to check in on time and let you know that. Jill, you know, what you were talking about there I think, you know, one of the things we do with these budget sessions is figure out what we want to do for work sessions for the remainder of the year. And I think it would be really interesting to have a work session that was really just on some of the rapid rehousing and rent stabilization funds that we've done, like get Matthew Falk and what
coordinated entry, yeah.
Coordinate with KDADS and the funding that he was able to secure. Maybe have Danny and other partners come in and talk about ESG, have Dana come in and talk about what they've been able to put together with tenants to homeowners, and maybe have a coordinated conversation specifically focusing on this.
Sure.
This summer. Does that sound like something the commission would be interested in hearing about? Okay, I'm hearing lots of head nods, so I'm going to put that down on my list.
Well, and the thing that I'm really trying to better understand is, I mentioned this on the RSF call yesterday, is what I see other communities that have really dialed in on the evictions and how that's just at epidemic levels in some communities that are also have epidemic levels of homelessness. One of the key tools that you need to prevent evictions and to support people is you need access to legal services and legal support. And so I'm trying to make that connection with the KU legal clinic, you know, the Kansas Legal Services that we support, and see what kind of support they can give us. But I think that might be an opportunity as well, because I think, you know, HCCI does a great job of providing resources, but there's still a lot of work that we could do to get real intentional about preventing evictions.
Does the commission have more questions? Renee?
I just have a comment on that, and I would say I would request that study session sooner rather than later, because being out and about around the community, I do think that there's a real gap in knowledge and understanding about just how many efforts are ongoing at the county, plus all of the partners to get at this issue of homelessness and prevention and rapid rehousing, and all of the pieces of the puzzle. There is just so huge, and it's so complicated, and it's kind of devastating to think about it. But a lot is being done, and thanks to Jill and all these partners, you know, we have a good start on kind of reimagining how to do these services. So any way we could move that study session forward sooner rather than later, I think would really help people in this moment. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Renee or any of our other safety net providers? I apologize for Chrissy and Cynthia and Sharon. If there's anything Jill, if there's anything you specifically want to add, I want to make sure you have that opportunity.
I don't have any more questions really. I just, so many of these things we're hearing today seem CARES Act related, and I'll be really looking forward to hearing more. I mean, the timing of this is going to be really critical, you know, as we weave in these budget requests with the information we're getting on CARES Act money, and then what is our limitations there. There's just such a huge demand, and I appreciate everybody bringing us. I mean, what Renee said, it's sort of hard to know what it's going to look like, and so you want to go huge, and at the same time we've got to balance that against not hurting our families. So you all understand that. I mean, I know you do. So that CARES Act money will be really important.
Thanks, Commissioner Kelly, and I do agree I also want to, you know, be my classic sort of Debbie Downer on some of these things. I think that 25 million is going to go really fast and in this community. And and it is really, we've got significant COVID related preparation, resiliency, and response needs. So I don't want folks to make their Christmas list a little too long just yet until we have a better handle of what we can spend those funds on.
And real quick, if I could, because it's not very often that we have all of you together, and I always look forward to these, the way we have the budget hearing set up now, and I'm really disappointed we couldn't meet in person, but all of you amaze me every day with what you do under normal circumstances, and what you have done to step up for our community in this really challenging last 3 or 4 months to make sure that people are not falling through the cracks. I just want to tell you thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I echo that. You know, it wasn't on purpose to start these work sessions with Safety Net, but I'm glad that we did, and I do wish I had given us more time to delve into this. So if there are follow-up conversations that we need to have with the commission through the rest of the summer and fall, we can definitely arrange those. And also, you know, as I think all of you know how seriously Douglas County takes its role in human service provision in this community, and we could not do that without you. And so thank you, to echo Michelle's words, thank you for your work.
This is Sharon. I'll say thank you as well. I do want to let you know, and you may have seen that the governor, the increase that the legislature approved, 5%, she has cut that from the allotment. And we've had a lot of advocacy efforts out the last few days, but it's still expected to be cut. So, you know, it's even at this time of high unemployment, we are not able to hire folks. So, I mean, it's very hard to hire staff. So that's kind of the big dilemma, you know, that we continue to deal with. So, but we appreciate your support, and it's very, it's just always good to listen to all of what's going on in the community. So all the good work is being done. So thank you.
Okay, so unless anyone else has any other comments, I've had a request for a quick 5-minute break. I know we have our aging services attendees, and Megan will probably stay on the line for us with that. So if we could take a quick 5-minute break and then move on to our next presentation. So does that work?
Thank you all.
5 minutes.
Bye, everyone.